I was everyone's favorite morning radio personality. Then I got kidnapped. You're going to be the host of my horror anthology podcast. What? I can't do horror. I'm too cheerful and upbeat. I can fix that. And that's how I came to be your host. I'm maybe disembodied, but I'm still happy as Slocum. So sit back and let us invade your safe space. It's the Tales from My Box podcast. Discretion is advised. Welcome to the box. You are receiving the Tales from My Box podcast, transmitting from the Dingy Dungeon Studio somewhere in Washington State. Today's sponsor is Coronation, the debut audiobook by Jordan A. Thomas, available right here or wherever legendary audiobooks are sold. Stay tuned after the story for a special trailer for this epic vampire adventure that my mother calls the greatest vampire audiobook since Bram Stoker recorded Dracula. Now, back to today's rodeo. It's not my first, but it will sure as shit be someone's last, as the son of the town drunk tries to raise some funds by climbing into the ring with a supernaturally enhanced bovine. Potential triggers are demonic cattle, horn goring, and country music. This story is going out in loving memory of Michael Paul Clark, U.S. Army, Tacoma PD, and Tempe Parks and Recreation. We miss you, buddy. This one's for you. It's called The Demon Bull of Lincoln, Montana. The Ring of Fire at the annual 4th of July rodeo in my hometown of Lincoln, Montana was something I had eagerly anticipated the last 4 months since I turned 18. The Ring of Fire is an event where any 6 participants over the age of 18 can get into the ring with a live bull. The object of the event is to grab a rope attached to the bull's horns. It's not as easy as it sounds. Prior to the event, each contestant stands in the middle of the ring, and the gathered crowd is given a chance to bid on their chances of winning. It's like a Wild West version of the Hunger Games. The person with the highest bid on the winning contestant collects half the money wagered, while the winning contestant gets the other half. Everyone else gets to watch their friends and neighbors get run down by a hyperactive bovine. For the poor kid in town, it's a chance for prestige and the equivalent of 2 weeks' pay I would make at my job as a ranch hand. Rodeo Saturday came, and I tried to keep my nerves at bay throughout the preceding events. The Ring of Fire was the final event of the evening, so I had a full day of walking around, checking out the crowd, and watching all the skilled participants in the roping, barrel racing, and bull riding events. The beer was flowing on this clear 85-degree day, and the crowd of well over 5,000 lining the green grass hill overlooking the rodeo grounds was getting more and more excited as the day went on. I was doing my best to stay hydrated and not throw up. Finally, the time had come for me to enter the arena. I was familiar with Chi-Chi, the Mexican fighting bull that was going to be released upon us so I figured I had a bit of an advantage. The bids came in fast and furious. It was like everyone in the crowd wanted in on the action. The participants were Jesse Winkle, our high school quarterback when I was a sophomore. He looked like he had been hitting the bottle more than the weight room since graduation. He was the odds-on favorite, and the bidding confirmed it. $1,500 from the local casino owner. Andy Dyer, a local barroom tough guy, and way too old to be in this competition. But here he was in his sleeveless shirt and weightlifting gloves, fetching a solid $1,100 bid. Sheila LeDoux. I've always been friendly with her, in that way that guys can be friendly with girls they're not trying to hook up with. She led basketball teams to the state tournament in her high school years and went on to briefly play volleyball at Northern Idaho before suddenly leaving the program for unknown reasons. Several of her girlfriends pooled their money together to outbid a local rancher for $1,000. Martine Garcia, another local ranch hand who nobody really knew much about, except that he was hardworking, well-mannered, and his English wasn't great. There were rumors that he used to be a professional bull rider in Mexico, but nothing ever confirmed. His graying hair worked against him in the bidding, and he only got $975. Zeke Carlisle, the town drunk, in a town that's seen its share. Having him in there was a little awkward. I'm surprised they allowed him. His clothes were thrashed, his beard was scraggly and gray, and he danced around like a fool in front of the crowd to try to elicit some bids. $50 was finally placed, something of a mercy bet. Then there was me, Zeke Carlisle's son, the guy who everyone always felt needed to know about his father's antics. I love this town, and the people are great people, but it's too much to be the son of the town drunk. So I needed to win this thing and put my father in the rearview mirror. As I was introduced, the rodeo grounds went silent. All eyes on me. You could hear a mosquito fart in the woods. I wasn't about to dance around and play the fool like my old man, so I stood there, chin up, and tried to make eye contact with as many people in the crowd as I could as the announcer championed for someone, anyone, to put some money down on me. Nothing. Not one bid. The sky darkened. A long, black storm cloud rolled over us from seemingly out of nowhere. This isn't unusual in Montana. Hot days give way to afternoon thunderstorms every day. The rodeo organizers weren't going to cancel the festivities due to a little rain and lightning. So it looked as if we were going to be doing this thing under fire. The announcer joked about us having to dodge lightning strikes and bullhorns before returning to his plea for someone to lay some money down on the teenage ranch hand so we could get on with the show. $2,000, bellowed a dark, sinister-sounding voice from the hillside viewing area. The collective crowd veered their attention to the source and were met with the sight of a cowboy figure dressed in black striding toward the paddock. His long white hair and beard contrasted his head-to-toe black wardrobe. The only spots of color shone from his golden spurs. His long black duster flowed in the breeze of the nearing storm. With one hand on the top of the rail of the fence, the old cowboy leapt into the arena with the contestants and charged toward my father, who stood frozen in the thick dirt of the arena. The dark cowboy halted in front of my father, who seemed to sink into the dirt as the dark cowboy raised his finger to his face and spoke something indecipherable to him through his teeth. The dark cowboy turned away from my father just as the bull chute opened, and we got our first look at the buffalo-sized black bull with glowing crimson eyes. The target rope was tied up in a noose from each end and looped around both 2-foot-long horns that nobody seemed to remember to file down for our safety. This wasn't Chi-Chi. Usually the bulls come out of the chute with a bang, mad bucking, hard charging for a short time before settling down. This demon bull simply stepped out of the chute and seemed to take a lingering look at each one of us from left to right. Jesse, Andy, Sheila, Martine, Dad, and me. Then he settled his burning gaze on the dark cowboy, who gave him the slightest of nods. And bang! The demon bull shot toward Jesse, who never lost the terror-frozen expression on his face before the top of the bull's head caved it in. Pain happens in the ring of fire. We all know the risks before we step in the arena. This was something else. I don't know what everyone else did in that moment, but I lost my shit. I ran for the fence to get the hell out of there. Money be damned. I didn't make it 5 yards before someone tackled me from behind. I turned over quick to see my dad on top of me, desperation across his face. "We can't run, boy. We have to finish the game." I looked over to the dark cowboy and caught a glimpse of the demon bull goring Andy through the back and out the other side of his chest. The dark cowboy just looked back at me and tipped his hat. My dad pulled me back to my feet. "Get on the fence. I'll bait him over to you." When he passed by, grab the rope. I hesitated to argue for a moment before he pushed me toward the fence and yelled, "Go!" Sheila seemed to have the same idea I had. She was booking for the fence as fast as I was. But she didn't escape the bull's attention, and he charged her with thunderous stomps. Lightning crackled across the sky. Thunder rolled over us, and the first giant drops of rain began pelting the rodeo grounds. It was a race to the fence, Sheila in the lead with the bull bearing down on her. 20 yards, 15, 10, 5. Sheila leapt for the fence as the bull's head dipped under her ass and tossed her over. She must have gone up 10 feet and landed across the top of the rail of the paddock, ribs first before dropping to the mud below. I got to the fence and I climbed to the top rail. Something made me feel like I couldn't go over the rail to freedom. It was like an invisible force, whether mental or supernatural, was stopping me from running to freedom. Martine was opportunistic and leapt onto the bull's back. A wave of hope shot through me. I didn't care if I won or not. I just wanted this nightmare to be over. If Martine could get the rope off the bull's horns, all this would be done. I hoped. The bull noticed Martine immediately, and the ride was on. Martine took hold of the rope and held on for dear life, and that mountain of black death kicked and twisted with the ferocity of a god. I was young, but I have been around rodeos all my life, and I've heard all the stories, the great bull rides of all time. This one was the most incredible I have seen ever, then and since. This aging cowboy from somewhere in Mexico stayed on that beast for 8 seconds, and I started counting late. Martine flailed at the ropes as the demon bull launched him and managed one loop off before hitting the now muddy ground. Time seemed to stop as Martine lifted himself upright on his knees and reached for his hat beside him. The bull, no longer in a rage, crept up to the champion rider as he placed his hat over his heart and stiffened his posture. The demon bull eased the point of his right horn to Martine's throat as the proud ranch hand raised his chin and closed his eyes. The demon bull stopped and held the position for just a moment before delivering his final verdict. The next wave of thunder fell on us, and the rain became so heavy I could barely see my father approaching the bull from behind. He began to hop and wave his arms around like a drunken idiot. He was taking care of his part of the plan. I just had to execute mine, and we could get out of this alive. The demon went for my dad, and I readied myself on the fence. Dad turned tail and fled. No more showmanship, just a wild scramble for life. Within 3 seconds, the old man passed me, and I tried to snatch the last loop of rope from the bull's horn. I got the rope, but I didn't clear the horn. I felt the ball of my right arm leave the socket of my shoulder with a sudden snap, and somewhere in the blackness of pain I hit the ground. I wasn't out long. The last thing I wanted to do was get up, but the terror pushed me to my knees. I tried to see my dad's fate through the mud and tears in my eyes, but all I saw was his limp, hunched over body sitting up against the rail of the fence 20 yards away. The demon bull turned back toward me. For a moment, I hoped the game would be over since I was the last one. But no. The rules were clear. The game wouldn't end until I removed the noose from the bull's horn. I wiped my eyes as clear as I could, and I saw the dark cowboy staring back at me from the middle of the arena. I lifted my mud-soaked body up with a wobble. My right arm was useless, and I was no good with my left. I didn't have a chance in hell, so I did the only thing I could think of, and I charged the dark cowboy. I had no plan. I couldn't fight him with one arm, but I charged him anyway, and that demon bull followed. Darth Cowboy stood his ground, but I caught a look of interest from him, as if he hadn't anticipated this tactic. It was a race to the grim shit kicker, and I had a decent jump. I figured I'd try to tackle the old man, and if the demon bull ran me down, I'd take out his master as well. 20 yards out, 15, 10, 5, and I ate shit. When my legs got too far extended for me to keep my balance. On the ground again. I heard the booming gallop of my coming executioner. It was over. The only thing to do was to face it like a cowboy. So I lifted myself up to take the hit. I elevated slowly, taking in the sight of the dark cowboy's boots and spurs, and then his golden bull skull belt buckle. His arm was extended, hand out, and he had an easy expression on his face. I turned, and the demon bull had stopped within 6 inches of where I was standing, his heavy breaths heating my face. I don't know why I dared, but I reached out to my would-be killer, and I removed the double-sided noose from the one horn it still hung from. As soon as I did this, the dark cowboy lowered his hand. The demon bull turned away and began walking toward the gate to the outside. I held that noose in my hand, and any sense of accomplishment was drowned out by the thoughts of what would happen next. I couldn't hear the crowd. I hadn't heard them since the dark cowboy had appeared. The dark cowboy breezed past me and strode to the announcer's booth. I watched as he extended his hand to the frightened announcer. The announcer shoved an enormous pile of money into the dark cowboy's hand and fled. The dark cowboy turned and stormed back toward me. I didn't dare run. I just stood there holding my noose as he came nearer. I heard the crowd come alive all of a sudden, as if someone had pressed play with the volume up too loud. They were screaming with sheer terror and scattering as fast as they could back to their trucks or over the hill, any avenue of retreat they could muster. The angry sky parted, and sunlight split through onto me. The rain stopped, and the dark cowboy and I came face to face. He held the thick wad of money out for me to take. I hesitated, but took the dough being offered. I looked him in his yellow eyes because I thought he would respect me for it. This was the first time I got a good look at his facial features. They were old, starved, and stony, but ever so familiar. He looked like my dad. He looked like me. "Give your old man a proper burial, then get out of town," he grumbled to me. I nodded and gave him a frightened, "Yes, sir." He nodded and split away. I stood there watching him and the demon bull wander into the fast fleeing crowd. Sirens were approaching. So I stuffed the wad of cash into my muddy pocket and I approached my dad's slumped over body. This man, Zeke Carlisle Jr., whose name I share, was responsible for so much pain in my life. But I'm guessing that he was going through his own things as well. Some of those things I'll never understand. How about the Rocky Mountain oysters on that thing? I love Montana. Next time you're up for a death-defying adventure, take a road trip to Big Sky Country in the middle of the winter. If you're lucky, you'll have a harrowing tale of survival to tell all your friends. If you're unlucky, you'll get a commemorative white cross with your name on it planted in the exact spot of your demise. Everybody wins. Now don't go away. Next on the program is a short trailer for Jordan A. Thomas's 10-hour vampire extravaganza, Coronation, followed by a sampled chapter from the audiobook. If you're in for a wild paranormal adventure or just want to help out the show, check out Coronation by Jordan A. Thomas on Spotify and other retailers. Look for us on all your social platforms and don't forget to review and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, don't open the box.
Keegan, Chapter 18. I know all about cars, but I've never experienced one until now. The heavy equipment we use for the temple, loaders, backhoes, and a couple of flatbed pickup trucks gave me plenty of experience behind the wheel. Never at this speed, though. We're shooting down the desert road with the speedometer pinned at 120 miles per hour. It's an insane speed and I'm not in control of it. Dash lights cast weird shadows over the face of the most gauntly-looking human I've ever encountered. Poke has the wheel and my life in his hands. It's horrifying and exhilarating at the same time. A wire spring in the back of my seat has popped out of place, and I can't seem to shift into a position where it isn't sticking me in the back. A smell of old cigarillos makes me hold my breath for long periods while Poke drones on and on about his life story and the vampire hunting business. What I've learned so far: if you sever a vampire's head clean off the neck, the head will remain preserved and you can turn it in at a clearinghouse and collect a bounty. However, if the head does not come off clean, everything will turn to ash and you put your life in danger for nothing. I met an Australian fella named Michael Kelly. He was doing trick boomerang shows with a carnival I fell in with after my whore of a mother kicked me out of the house. We got to talking about the occult, and since my whore of a mother was all into that shit since the time I can remember, I kept up in conversation with him. Must have liked me some because he took me under his wing and taught me everything he knew about boomerangs. Once I started hunting vampires, I made sassy here. He taps his jade boomerang with his bony finger. He has the damn thing mounted on his dashboard, as if we might have to battle a vampire while going 120 miles per hour. Kind of a tribute to the master. Poke chatters non-stop for an hour. The calf muscles in my leg begin to cramp up from the nervous contractions I'm making. We can see maybe 20 feet in front of us. Anything appearing in the road becomes instant death. But Poke seems unfazed by it all. He keeps talking and talking. I rode solo for a long time until I met my wife, Trudy Mayflower, the love of my life. We were both trying to collect a bounty on Adam Silverspike. He was a famous first-generation ghoulie, older than the Bible. Silverspike was about to split my dome with some ancient battle axe when Trudy came up behind him and rolled his head. Saved my life. We never left each other's side until the day she died. He's making me think of Lexi right now. We spent all our lives together, and when it came down to it, she'd rather stay in our little village and die than run off with me. I'll get over her. Plenty of girls my age in the city of Provo. That's where Poke says we're going to turn in the bounty on the Sentinel's head. My love is vengeance now. Went off and got hooked up with some junkies in Seattle. Got myself a blood disease that'll ash up even the most purebred creature of the night. Poke adopted vampire hunting as his life's calling one day on the set of Battle in the Bush, a B-grade movie about Australian cowboys. The film crew turned into a bunch of hungry vampires and began snacking on all the pretty actors during the film's wrap party. Poke made it out with 5 heads and a new career. Or so he says. Where are we going? I ask. Poke shuts up. He stops gabbing on a dime. I wish I had asked an hour ago. My appreciation for his silence lasts a couple of minutes before it gets creepy. I look over at him, and he smiles at me. We're going to see that pretty face of yours in action, he tells me. I hope I'm wrong about his meaning. A flash of a human form out the corner of my eye, and in a split second, he's clipped off the passenger side corner of the van. Poke keeps the gas pedal down without a second thought to the person he just hit. I look up in the rearview mirror and watch as the guy laying in the road gets to his feet and starts walking down the road as if nothing happened. He's dead already, kid. Don't give him a second thought. There are plenty of them waiting for you. As the words leave his lips, another figure appears off the side of the road in Poke's headlights. We shoot past him. Even at high speed, I'm able to see the dead look on his face. Vampires? I ask. Mongrels. Vampire breeding has to this point in history been selective. Humans with a very particular genetic coding were considered candidates. You just saw what happens when a human without the vampire gene gets turned. Someone I know is building an army of them. What does that have to do with me? I inquire. You are going to fight them, he informs me. A mob of mongrel vampires appears in the roadway at the edge of Poke's headlights. He lets his foot off the gas, but it's too late to keep us from slamming into the crowd. The cracking of bones on the tires and thudding of bodies hitting the side of the van create an unnatural rhythm. Poke hangs onto the steering wheel as the bodies veer us from one side of the road to the other. He lets out a howl of laughter as a vampire dressed in a 3-piece suit disappears under his tire. You want to know how my old man taught me how to swim? No, I say. Cocksucker took me out to the lake and walked me to the end of the dock. He looks down at me and tells me to kick if I want to live. The van skids to a stop, and the writhing vampires engulf us, well aware of our presence. What does that mean? I blurt out as a once attractive woman in tattered clothes bares her fangs at me through the window. I know. Who says that to a kid? Long story short, he tossed my ass in. And I swear I ain't shitting you here. I went out of body. Like I could see myself drowning in the nasty water with the algae and the fish shit. But I could hear my old man's voice yelling at me through the water. Kick! 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 I'm listening, but I'm fixed on a long-haired Asian vampire smashing his fist into the windows far too many times to leave his hand intact. What you getting at, sir? I don't want to know the answer. He reaches over and grabs Sassy off the dashboard with a wild gleam in his eyes and a giddy chuckle in his speech. Kick or die, buckwheat! I see him hit the electric window controls on the driver's side console. Stop! Don't! Are you crazy? The window retracts, and I'm stabbing vampires before it's halfway down. Why are you doing this? I yell. I'm terrified. For the first time in my life, survival is in question. Shut up and kick! He claps back. No choice. Right foot back to my chest as I pivot in my seat and kick the door with everything I've got. The door flies open. I'm out of the van and striking faster than a bad memory. Nothing else matters at this moment. In my zone, practicing my religion. Working. Haven't felt like this since... I can't remember. Got a task. Kill vamps. Apply my systematic method of obliteration upon their punk asses. I'm swatting heads off the undead like it's a new dance craze. I glance back at Poke on the opposite side of the van. He's got his boomerang in his hand, and he's fighting off the monsters as if born to do so. I'm not scared. This feels like home. I spear a skinny vamp with an afro through the heart as he dives off the top of the van and toss him into a crowd of bloodsuckers surrounding me before slashing the necks of 2 vamps behind me on the counterswing. A quick pivot sees my blade across the top of a charging vamp's forehead. The top of his head comes off, but the damn thing still stands. Over at the van, Poke hangs back in the driver's seat, smoking his cigarillo, watching me fight. Okay, kid, quit showing off and get in the van. As he pulls away, I skip out of the diving grab of a vamp in a biker jacket and slash my way past a hissing soccer mom, diving into the passenger seat in full stride before chest kicking the old man who dove in after me. Poke hits the gas and mows down a line of bloodsuckers. He looks over at me with the most serious expression. You know, you have a moral obligation to use your fighting skills to help your fellow humans survive this ghoulie epidemic. Epidemic? No one believed these things existed until a year ago. A couple of online videos surface here and there, unexplained murders in the thousands sweep the nation, and it has become quite apparent to the people of the world my life's work was always justifiable and important. I do believe myself a chosen one of sorts, and I would like to extend the invitation to you to join me. He nudges the steering wheel to clip a vamp with the corner of the van. I don't owe anybody anything, I reply. Silence. Seems like a full minute. Disappointing, Poke deadpans. You can make a buttload of money. He gestures to the head of the village sentinel perched on the console between us. This guy is rare. He'll fetch a couple grand easy. I'm going to take you to Provo. You'll see how bad it is. If you want to collect this bounty with me, I'll be happy to give you a cut. You kind of helped. How did you know where to take me to fight the vampires? Poke takes a long drag off his cigarillo and thinks well before he speaks. The thought process shows in his face. He's weighing all the angles to decide whether it's a good idea to tell me or not. They seem to be migrating toward your village.